Hello, this is Bill Bullard with RCAF USA, the voice of the independent cattle producer in the United States of America. So here we are, fed cattle prices last week below $1.05. That's where they were a decade ago. But back then, consumers were paying about $4.12 per pound for beef. But today, with decade-old cattle prices, consumers are nevertheless paying an unprecedented average price of over $7 per pound for beef. So how does this happen? Was our industry going along just fine for the past 5 years and then suddenly, overnight, it wasn't? Or were there telltale signs of an impending crisis within our industry that were completely ignored by those who were responsible for monitoring the health and vigor of our U.S. cattle industry? RCAF USA believes systemic market problems were glaringly evident for at least the past 5 years, but that those glaring problems were completely ignored by the entire rest of our industry. In other words, one cow after another started crawling through the fence that the creek washed out, and before anyone paid attention, the pasture was empty. So where were all the government regulators and private industry associations when the first cow got out? Now, she got out in 2015. That's when cattle producers saw prices fall further and faster than any time in history. Cattle prices collapsed month after month for a year, tried to recover, and then continued collapsing for most of another year. Nearly a 2-year fall down a bottomless prairie dog hole. We've never seen anything like it. So what did the regulators and industry representatives say and do about this unprecedented and disastrous event? I'll leave it to you to go back and look at what everyone else said and did. But what I will tell you is what RCAF USA did. In January 2016, while cattle prices were inexplicably falling and consumer beef prices remained at near record highs, we requested the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee to investigate the cause of this unprecedented price collapse. The Government Accountability Office initiated the investigation that was completed in mid-2018. The GAO informed us that it did not investigate whether the packers engaged in anti-competitive behavior because it did not have subpoena authority to review internal packer documents. Thus, the investigation did not lead to any antitrust or Packers and Stockyards Act enforcement actions. But more cows kept crawling through the fence, and in early 2018, we witnessed unexplainable volatility in both the cash and futures markets. After researching the relationship between futures, cash, and wholesale beef prices, we filed a complaint with the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, urging it to investigate the causes for all the anomalies in the cattle futures prices. Today, we still don't know if the CFTC conducted any kind of investigation into the dysfunctional cash and futures markets. So with cattle prices trending downward and consumer beef prices trending upward and no interest on the part of government regulators or any other trade association to do anything about it, we were up against the wall. So what do you do when the government regulators show no inclination to take any antitrust enforcement action to protect the competitiveness of your industry's marketplace? And what do you do when no other trade association shows any inclination to take any corrective action? Well, our choices were limited to throwing our hands in the air and giving up, or we could take action on our own. And that's what we did. In April 2019, we filed a historic national class action antitrust lawsuit against the Big Four packers, alleging that they were violating U.S. antitrust laws, the Packers and Stockyards Act, the Commodity Exchange Act, to artificially lower the price of cattle paid to America's cattle producers. Our lawsuit against the Big Four packers was filed long before the August 2019 Holcomb, Kansas fire that prompted the Secretary of Agriculture to call for an investigation into the beef packers' conduct. It was also filed long before the COVID-19 pandemic prompted many members of Congress, 11 state attorneys general, and even the President of the United States to call for an investigation into the beef packers' conduct. On June 8th, the federal court held a hearing to consider the Big Four packers' request to dismiss our antitrust lawsuit, and we hope the court will allow our case to proceed. But our persistent actions have already caused an inattentive government and an inattentive industry to finally begin focusing their attention on the systemic problems in our U.S. cattle market. This is important. This is the first step in restoring a robustly competitive marketplace that will afford America's ranchers the opportunity to earn a competitive and sustainable income from the marketplace itself. Well, thank you for helping to support the American rancher. If you'd like to learn more about what RCAF USA is doing to help the American rancher and all of rural America, please go to our website at www.r-calfusa.com. Thank you and goodbye.